Hello! This one's especially for all my fixed-wing flying friends. You probably feel a little bit hard done by from some of the Express LRS stuff. I mean, we did have the lovely 5-channel stuff that I reviewed not long ago, and I put that in a plane up there, which you can't see, and my car, which I took out for a long drive. That was good fun. Just a way of getting, 5 channels of PWM from an Express LRS receiver. Brilliant. But lots of people in sort of the traditional hobby, they might be flying gliders or planes with old flight controllers or no flight control at all. What do they do? There is a solution. RadioMaster have brought out a whole series of receivers which are based on Express LRS, which put out more or less PWM channels. And I've got 3 of them here. I've got the ER4, which is this tiny little 4-channel thing. Brilliant for just flying a little wing or something like that where you don't have the need for lots of channels. I've then got this ER6, which is a 6-channel receiver, and an ER8, which is an 8-channel receiver. These have dual antennas as well instead of the normal T-piece. This has just got a single. But they all have telemetry, so you can plug in a battery to a special port in there and it will report the voltage back as telemetry. Very useful for things you might not fly FPV and you want to know what the battery is. These are the basic ones. There are also some models specifically for gliders which come with their own vario sensor, for example, so you get the so you know if you're gaining and losing height. So what am I going to do with these? Well, first off, we're going to go into close-up and we're going to take them out of the box and see what's happening. And secondly, what I thought I might do is take some of my planes you can see on the wall. You can see that one on the wall. You can see the Bixler. And just now over there is one of my Falcon wings. Both of those use Storm OSDs, really old OSD, but they're using traditional PWM. And the wing is using 6 channels. I think it's using just 5 channels actually for that. And the Bixler here has got a pan and tilt on it, so it's using all 8 channels. So I thought I might put that on there, and then I've got a little wing that I haven't flown for ages. I can use this. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with the receivers that are in there. That's an LR9. That's an old FrSky DR2 Plus. They work perfectly well. They do reasonable range. However, it's very convenient to have everything on one type of receiver when you're out with a radio, and also we get the added benefits of extra range and telemetry that's coming from these. And Express LRS isn't particularly expensive, so if you're getting new stuff, this is an excellent way of being able to fly like a really good signal which can go for a long way on a new plane. Anyway, let's go to close up, let's have a look what's in here, and then we'll start talking about setting them in these guys and going for a fly. Okay, here's our receivers. Let's get them out and see what we get there. So this is the ER4. And this is the very small receiver. You've got this single whip antenna. You've got your 4 channels there. And just at the back, you've got a solder pad to put the external voltage on. And in the bag, we've got this little thing, which is a wire to do that, and some clear shrink pads. So you can go ahead and shrink over the top when you solder into that, because at the moment this is already shrinked over, so you need to cut it off, solder on, put a new cover on, and then we've just got a card saying what the official manuals are. So there's not much to it in terms of the packaging. That is the small and simple one. Then we've got the ER6, which looks like this. We've got the 6 channels, a separate battery input. We've also got a connection here for the voltage, here for an RX-TX. The idea of that is to put the ability to have more telemetry for a more traditional CRSF signal. And then in here we've got the card again, and we've got a couple of connectors to connect to those guys. In terms of the battery voltage that you can use, you can plug in directly with anything from 4.5 to 8.4 volts. Presumably there's some internal 5-volt regulator there. And in this bit to detect the voltage, that's up to 35 volts. I think that's about detecting, it's not powering it. What I want to know is, if you go the traditional route where you've got a BEC from the ESC and you put 5 volts in there, will it spread it out through the others? That seems to be unknown. I'll have to check that out. Anyway, that's the ER6. Finally up is the ER8. And essentially, that is exactly the same as the ER6. it is just a bit wider to accommodate the extra 2 channels there. Okay, so we have our receivers. I'm going to have a quick test on this. I'll probably do a bench test just to see how things work, and then let's get them installed on the planes we talked about. Well, I thought I'd try and go through what was on my existing radio, and this is on my Tyrannus, and there's some weird stuff on here. I'm not quite sure what I was doing. Got all sorts of mixes. I got Exo and Zero, stuff like that. I've got Expo in the inputs here and a rate differently. Yeah, maybe have a look. It's like the first bunch of channels are normal, and then it looks like I mix in a rudder and aileron in a certain switch. I thought one of these was some sort of flight mode thing. I can't quite figure this out. I got the Bixler down. I'm going to get a battery out and plug it in. We can see what the buttons do. You know, the old rose-coloured spectacles. In my head, I remember this being quite neat, but it doesn't look like it, does it? I think I've connected these up right. Most of the labels are dropped off, and I don't know, and I don't know how to work this anymore and how the buttons work, but I'll try powering it up and see if it explodes. Well, it seems to be powered, and we've got picture. So the main ones are aileron, elevator, rudder. That's all good. Right, so then what do we have elsewhere? We had... Okay, the Pantel seems alright. Those on those bits, and then we've got... The question is, what have I got for the modes here, and would I notice it if I changed the mode?
Flaps 50%.
Oh, that's flaps.
100%. Flaps 50%. Flaps on. Pilot assist.
Aha.
38 activated. Manual.
Okay, found it, and we've got a good indication here that when we hit a channel,
Pilot assist.
it comes up with pilot assist, which is stabilised.
RT8 activated.
Then we've got RTH, which is effectively come home, but
Manual.
it won't activate because there's no satellites. Right, so I think if I try and copy what's on the radio and try and get this all back, that should be okay. My only worry is that back in the day we programmed these guys. You can see the L9R there on the end. We pushed in a button to say failsafe, and what we would do is put it into RTH mode, so basically it emulated your throttle and stick positions. So I need to think about that. I also probably won't have any RSSI. There's a little flap under here, which is where I keep the Storm OSD and this little thing to try and alter it. So yeah, okay. First things first, I'm going to get the 8-channel receiver, make sure my passphrase is on it, basically do a 1-to-1 wire swap, and then try and program the Boxer to be vaguely the same as the Tyrannus here, and see what happens. Okay, so I've just plugged in an ESC to give it 5 volts on channel 3, and I'm just waiting for it to go into Wi-Fi mode so I can change my passphrase and see if there's anything else I need to do. Okay, so we're in Wi-Fi mode. I've already done my binding phrase, and I think the only thing I want to do, and I'm doing this through here because at the moment the version of firmware for these receivers isn't active on the EXPRESS-RS configurator. I think what I need to do, and I'll probably have to come back to this, is change a bit of the PWM output. The reason being is that for output 5 we don't want channel 5. Channel 5, no matter what, is very strictly a 1-bit switch. It's on or off. It's the arming switch. So if we change that one to I was trying to think, do we just skip one and go to, if we go channel 6 there, and then channel 7, channel 8 and channel 9, try that. What I also notice is that we've got failsafe ones here, so it looks like I can do exactly the same thing that I could do on my old LR9, just a little bit more manual. So it'd be a case of setting the USEC, which was going to be either sort of high, probably. I can get a measurement on that, check it, and check it before I go out, just to make sure that it will go into like RTH. But yeah, I think that's what I want there. So let's set the PWM output. That's updated. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I'm going to try plugging this in, see what happens. Okay, quick update. We seem to have it working. We've got ailerons, elevator, rudder, throttle accidentally, and then we've got flaps to position. We've got flight modes to go to PA, and hopefully that second one down is returned to home. Hello, just interrupting, me from the future here, and I realised the whole point in showing the Bixler is we needed the 8 channels because we had the pan and tilt, and the only thing I didn't show is the pan and tilt. So to be clear, we've got your normal elevator, ailerons, rudder, throttle, flaps, and whoops, pan and tilt. I like this. It means you can look right down if you want to do it. Anyway, yes, we had all the channels there. What we're going to have to do, I think, is go outside, get some satellites, make sure RTH actually does fire up, and then see if I can set the failsafe for the receiver from the web interface and see if that basically works. Yeah, that should work, hopefully, I think. I mean, we got a lot of surface movement on the ailerons. I can't believe there's no... I didn't have any rates in here. It seems insane how much there is, but... oh, we'll sort that out later. We'll get to it. And this is what we ended up with, and it will look pretty strange to anybody that's normally used to dealing with a no signal failsafe. Basically, for channel 3, which is the throttle, we've put that on 1700. The flight controller we have, the Storm, doesn't control the throttle, so we need to put the failsafe so the throttle comes on at a decent rate. Now you're probably thinking, well, if I ever plug this in without a radio, it's going to go crazy, which isn't the case because there is some protection there to say if throttle is high when you switch on, don't do anything with it. In fact, many ESCs will start saying, oh, I think he wants to do the throttle range and stuff like that. We've got a slightly different USEC on channel 6 as well. This is for the flaps. The flaps were slightly out of line, so I tidied that up. And lastly, channel 8, or output 8, which is channel 9, is the mode switch, and that mode at 1950 puts it high, which puts it into RTH mode. Now I went out and tested this just to make sure when I turned the radio off that, you know, basically it went crazy, it went to RTH and the throttle went on, which it did, which is scary to test, although I could have just taken the prop off, that would have been easier. Now the 6 channel one here is going to go in this old Falcon wing, which has that in, and this is pretty easy because it's got another Storm in, and it just should be the case of replacing them and doing the same thing with the failsafe. The more interesting prospect, I think, is this little guy. This is the Hornet wing, and this is falling out. This has got the worst camera known to man, no flight controller or OSD or anything. We're obviously going to put this little guy in, and we should be able to wire up the telemetry for power so we get some readout on our telemetry. But first we've got to get under there, take all this rubbish out. Might see if we can swap this camera over because that is terrible. That's not very good. Lots of not very good stuff, but we will see. Okay, that's mostly wired up. I've got the new camera. This is going to be the new VTX, and you see I've got the telemetry line going there. And I just wanted to check I was picking up the battery voltage, and that all looks good. So here's the finished Hornet wing. We got the old Umway in there. We've got the new camera. We've got the single antenna vertically mounted there. You might notice there's a slight difference in servos there. That's because this was okay, but it didn't have any torque behind it. So I tried to take it out to have a look at, and it kind of lost. But fortunately I found this one, which seems okay. Now you're probably wondering, okay, fine, you've got the telemetry there, you can look at it, but do you have to keep like raising up your goggles to find out what's going on? So here's my telemetry screen. You see I've got the RX battery there, but yeah, how do I not look at it? And what I've done is, if we go into here, I've set up this little logical switch, basically saying it's an A smaller than X, and I'm saying if RX battery is lower than 10.3, then logical switch LO1 is activated. And then what I do, when logical switch 1, I play the value of the RX battery. So the idea is if it drops under, was it 10.3, then it basically says the voltage. So I can show you that.
9.7 volts.
So it's given me an indication that the voltage dropped under there, which is a good start, I figure. There's some more to do, but that'll do for now. With the Falcon here, I basically kept all the wiring as is and just swapped it out one to one. Didn't quite fit, and there was a bit of extra thing to rip apart here. And what I've done, because these twin ones actually have antenna diversity, I've got one mounted here in a horizontal way and one mounted vertically, which should give me the best signal. Basically take the best signal it's got, no matter what its orientation in the air. And with the Bixler, I had much the same thing. One antenna polarised vertically and one horizontally. They will flap about in the wind, but I think they'll do an okay job. Hello, welcome to flight testing day, where the field has been cut, still free of cows, and I seem to have chosen the world's hottest day, at least for the UK, to do this. So I have managed to get this tiny little bit of shade just here where I'm going to stand, so make sure I don't try and fly behind myself, maybe walk out a bit to launch and that sort of thing. So we had a slight issue with the car, and that is the fact that not everything would fit. I didn't think they would, so I thought I'd bring the Bixler because that's got more moving parts. But that didn't want to go in the car at all unless I took the wings off, and taking the wings off is a right old faff on that thing. Well, not so much taking them off, but putting them back on, especially in a field on this sort of day. So we've got the old Falcon. We moved it onto the 6th channel, as mentioned. We've got the diversity antenna spread out. This is more glue than foam, so let's hope it works and stays together. It's quite windy, this should handle it okay. But the other one we bought is the little Hornet, which is going to be more of a interesting flight in this sort of wind. It's only a little wing, it's quite light, it's only 3S, so we'll see what happens. Let's give it a go, let's get some stuff in the air and see what happens. Well, the first thing was a quite boring sense of checking how the plane sat when we pointed it into the wind and then adjusting the trims. Basically, this was rolling over to one side. I think it was going over to the right here, so I had to just trim back to the left. It was also tending to nose down a bit, so I altered the elevons again on that stuff. What you're seeing here is I've got the DVR recording in the top right, and the main screen you're seeing the incredible, more than 10 years old little 808 key camera, which does 720p 60, and it's a bit fuzzy and it looks a completely different colour to the nice CCD sensor I'm using in the main bit of the plane, but it's flying okay, and we're getting a decent stable picture. Okay, well, we're flying alright. I need to land it and re-center the trims. Basically, I've just trimmed it, and now it's sort of going, hey, we're slightly out. This, I'm not sure about this VTX, it looks a bit dodgy. It's just the kilometre there. Back to PA. Yeah, well, link quality 100. As you might expect, no issues with the DBM, looking quite nice. It's been a while since I've flown this one properly. You can see the ancient Roman palace down there, what's left of it. As mentioned, I did find this VTX a bit rubbish. It was just something I stuck in to replace an old Immersion RC one. But you can see here, we're out at about 1600 metres at about 100 metres high, and it's starting to really fuzz up, and I really wouldn't expect that from the modern stuff that I tend to use nowadays. So I could always replace this, but the question is this plane as a whole just long in the tooth? But in terms of signal quality from the receiver, it's better than most of the T antennas I've used, and I guess that's because of the antenna diversity thing. As you can see here, we went in the air for about 15 minutes, just over. I had a good shoot around all over the place, quite happy. Coming in for a landing, this wind's really hitting the wing, but I thought it's a pretty good landing overall. Not a bad landing. I had a look at the telemetry screen a few times during the flight, even at the longest things, and so there wasn't a problem there, and I could always get it call out, so there's an issue. that was not a bad landing, if I do say so myself. The good thing about putting these new receivers on is that they give planes a new lease of life. I forgot how much fun this is to fly. I mean, it's a very cruisy plane, but still a lot of fun. Anyway, I have to see what do you remember the keychain camera? It's got one on there, look. I'll see what that looks like. But I think next we'll try and fly on a Hornet. Maybe not so far, because I am worried about this wind. There was a lot of, you could probably see the wing wobble as I went out that way. You could see it, you know, you had the yaw wobble going on. It was definitely drifting across there. So it's pretty strong wind up there, but let's see how this one goes. Okay, telemetry's all good there. So we've got a warning if it drops below. I think I put it as 10.4 volts. Just so you know, obviously if you're flying FPV and you've got nothing else telling you your voltage, you need something to tell you if it drops, so you don't have to lift the goggles and look down. So let's see if we can launch this just as the wind gets up for me. We probably heard there when I launched it, that motor just didn't sound right at all and didn't have any power, so I put it straight back down again, and when I got to the plane, I'm greeted with this. Now I don't have a spare collet for this. I'm hoping this just came off literally where it went down. I'm going to have a quick look around, see if I can find anything. If the thing was here, then I'm hoping it just will see something shiny, but you can never tell. This could be a very short flight for the little Hornet, I'm afraid. Talk about getting lucky, it wasn't far from where it came down, so it just dragged off. It was obviously not tight, and that little bit of landing just dragged it off, and I managed to find it. So put it back on, try again. Now beware when walking with planes and radios. That little thud you heard was it catching my thumb, which cut it a little bit, not too badly, and I could certainly carry on, but yeah, be careful, don't be like me. Well, much like the larger Falcon, the first thing to do was to get this thing trimmed out. And this was actually a little bit easier. It wanted to fly actually very nicely. It just needed a bit of, I think it was going to the right and just needed a bit of left trim. But in terms of pitch, it was spot on. So this little plane's obviously just literally 4 channels. Well, actually only 3 channels, but 4-channel receiver, nothing, no autopilot, no flight assist, nothing. It's pure. You know, we have a bit of expo, we've got some rates set up, and this is like just how a raw plane would be. And I guess, you know, this one would suit, you know, the guy that does just want to fly line of sight wings, or just a basic wing, you know, no flight controller, just flying in its rawest sense, really. So you have to do the mixes manually, you know. We mix in the aileron and elevator to do the normal wing mix. I mention this because I'm guessing people just don't do it these days that much if they're used to iNav, because it does it all for you. You actually have to do a mix on the radio for this little guy. So it's vastly improved by this this new camera. The old Unway VTX is doing pretty well. But yeah, the camera before was hopeless. It would have been fine today because it's a nice bright day, but prior to that it was just awful. I think it's a bit oversaturated, it's a bit over bright, but it is pretty bright today and everything's reflecting off the field. Could always convert this to 4S of course, but it's not like, you know, yeah, it lacks speed to a certain amount, but it's so light that that speed's not going to translate very well. Just translate into wobbles. If you get the right sort of nice calm day, you can just hug anything and real fly proximity in this thing nice and slowly if you need to. Whoa, got some wobbles here though. Just seeing what the voltage is, see if I can make it a sag or anything. Oh, it's 11.2 still at the moment. But yeah, if you're looking at the picture thinking, oh, it's really wobbly, what's wrong with it? It's like, well, that's how it is. You're riding around in the wind, and when quad pilots say it's like I couldn't fly anything, it's just not smooth. You just concentrate on your centre of the picture. The fact it's all going around gives you clues about what's happening with the wind. You know, if you feel the yaw waggle, you know you're sort of going crosswind and things like that. So it's all feedback that we can use when we fly these things. I really am liking the pitch on this camera. It's really sharp. See if I can punch it and make it do a sag or anything. Here we go. We're at 10.8 still. Jesus Christ, this thing goes full throttle and just stays doing it. Well, honestly, it does work. I tested it out. This is 50% dual rate. So there's a lot of movement in the surfaces you can have. But unfortunately, these guys were from flyingwings.co.uk, which don't exist anymore, so you can't get it anymore. But I'm sure there's lots of little wings that do similar jobs. But it's really nice to get and fly this one out again. I think this VTX is much better than the one in the Falcon wing. I've always liked the Unways. You'll wonder about link quality is at 100. RSI DBM is minus 88 at the moment. How are we doing voltage wise? 10.4. What did I set the alarm for? I think I said less than 10.4.
10.1.
Hey, we got the alarm. It starts warning me that it's dropped under, I think I set it for 10.2. And then that little burst, we got a 10.1. So pretty good warning about, you know, you're starting to get low if you keep zapping about. So if you're a long way away, come down and land. I'm not a long way away. So I was expecting to get a repeat of the voltage warning here, and I didn't. So I thought, oh, do I have to let it recover and then blast it again? So I kept blasting the throttle and nothing happened in the warning. And when I looked down, it suddenly said I had 8.4 volts. And I was like, oop, I've done something bad here. I've slightly killed the battery. Let's come in for a landing. Don't think I've got any power. Nope. Oop. I think I may have slightly merged the battery there. So let's get to the plane before the cows do. It's not actually too much of a bad landing, that one. Yeah, I blipped the throttle hard to get the telemetry to say something, and then I thought, oh, it's not saying it again. Perhaps the voltage has to recover and drop again before it says it again. I'll have to look that up. I think you might have to put it on repeat or something. But I looked down and it was saying like 8.4 volts. And I was like, ah, that's a toasted battery, that is. I think I put the throttle on for too long. So by the end of it, I had no throttle and I was just gliding down. Fortunately, happy landing. All is good. So as you can probably figure out, I did another flight of the Falcon just for fun, and it's always interesting to see the external shots of this one because I never see it, I never fly it line of sight, so it's always interesting for me. Took it a little bit further, out to about 2 kilometres, out over the sea just to see what was going on there, and I do not like that VTX. It was a bit old fuzzy, but I like the colours on the sea, that looked pretty nice, and the old wing held together okay. It still works somehow. And obviously I had another go at the Hornet wing because it's fun to fly, but 15 minutes on a little 800 mAh FrSky, and I bought 4 of them, but it was too hot to fly them all. Just 2 batteries on each did it for me. Well, that's a fun couple of flights on both of the wings there. Both did okay. The Falcon a bit wobbly. I'm trying to think if it's time to retire. It feels a bit spongy. It was a bit in the air. The little Hornet seemed to cope a lot better and flew much truer. But oh, we'll see. Well, the receivers work brilliantly, but let's go back to the office and we'll sum up. I'm going to get out of this heat and go get some food. So just before we go to conclusions, I'll just show you what I needed to do to fix the battery warning thing so it would repeat.
9.3 volts. 9.2 volts. 9.1 volts.
Okay, so what I needed for that warning was to repeat. So I just missed one little thing on the setup, and that is
if you go to the play val, there is this thing here, and that is the number of seconds between repeats. So if you set that to something like 5, then every 5 seconds it'll repeat the voltage should it fall below. Obviously, if it then recovers, if you punched out or something and then recovers, it will stop doing it.
These worked great, frankly. We've been waiting a long time for ELRS receivers that can do more channels than sort of 5 for PWM. Finally, they're here. They were a pretty easy swapping. Sorry, Bixler, you didn't get a flight next time, I promise. I mean, that 4-channel one's so small, it's underneath the ESC there. You can't even see it. I thought it was particularly useful as well that they all had the power sent back as telemetry if you wanted to. So for the big wing and the Bixler, I already had voltage on the OSD, but for this little guy, it was obviously very useful to get it called out when it dropped below a certain threshold. Although I should have remembered that I had to repeat it and not, killed my battery. But there's lots of different options there. I could set a button to shout out the voltage or shout out the link quality or the dBm RSSI, or have it on some sort of repeat so I always know what's going on. Lots of options there. Price wise, these are pretty good. I mean, the 4-channel one, these are launch prices in dollars, $14.99. The 6-channel, $24.99, and the 8-channel, $34.99. So really a great way of hooking up your old legacy planes with your PWM, and for those of you guys that fly gliders, having the inbuilt Vario as well sounds fantastic, and with options hopefully coming soon to use with these external telemetry connectors, so you can get things like GPS or other things like that. I think they talked about a current sensor with voltage sensor and stuff like that. I think another very interesting thing to mention is Express LRS is not standing still. When does it ever? Just a day or two ago, they released a release candidate 1 of version 3.3. This is very interesting because it expands this even further. They are saying up to 16 channels PWM you will be able to do on a receiver. They're also dropping S-Bus into the equation. So for legacy flight controllers that could take S-Bus, and maybe you had a receiver in with S-Bus, then you can also get a receiver with S-Bus at some point. They're bringing in cloud builds as well, so if you're ever stuck trying to build your stuff from source, the idea was that now pull it down off the cloud and it'll already have something built for you and you can just flash it. You don't have to go through that whole... Many people find it a bit intimidating and confusing. So there's just great stuff coming. I have to say the diversity receiver stuff looked really good. I mean, I haven't done much flying on Express LRS at a distance with just a single T antenna, but that was way stronger signal than I'd get on a quad at the same distance. Obviously quads, electronics are all a bit squashed and that can make a difference, but those were really good. Even, I mean, I didn't take this beyond 500 meters, but even that single little whip antenna worked really well. Yeah, really impressed. So yeah, if you want to go ELRS on higher number of PWM channels, you've now got an option. There will be links down below, of course, where you can check these out in more detail, and many thanks to RadioMaster for hooking me up with these. They were good fun to test, and I will try and get that Bixler out because I want to get it flying and make sure that pan tilt is all good and everything's happy. Anyway, I hope that review's been helpful, and I will catch you next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.